On our last program, Darius the Mead overtook the Babylonian Empire and established the empire of the Medes and the Persians. As we get to chapter 6 in Daniel, we see Darius setting up a hierarchy of bureaucratic administration. Gary Sturm is here to discuss with me Darius.
Now, when this Darius the Mead came, it's fascinating that Darius is a title in the Persian language, in the Farsi tongue, which is slightly different from the Royal Aramaic, although they're both Semitic-type languages. A Darius is a particular kind of ruler. In other words, it's their way of saying monarch.
So there were several Dariuses
Right.
down through this brief history here.
And apparently this one is called Gubaru. I believe that was his name, as given in the encyclopedia. And when he came to establish his kingdom, it's kind of strange because apparently Belshazzar was also of Median descent. Darius came and overthrew Belshazzar and set up his kingdom. Apparently this was an internal struggle. And he had in mind not destroying the city, but simply establishing a new reign. So he came in under the wall, dried out the riverbed that fed the city, came in under the wall, simply slew all the officials, and set up his own government.
But he let Daniel live, and Daniel had been made third ruler in the kingdom, which means then that Darius actually set up this kingdom on behalf of the Persians, of whom Cyrus was the big ruler.
Yes. The third verse of this chapter says, Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. There must have been something about Daniel that was really special. That is, he must have had a particular way of dealing with people. He must have been an absolute genius at organization, for example, in order to be recognized by a despotic monarch who was coming in to set up his own new government. And within a short time, Daniel was his right-hand man.
But you know, it happened again here, just as it has happened down through history. When someone rises to the pinnacle of power, there are others who want to pull him down.
Absolutely. And this brings to mind an incident that is very famous in Scripture. In the book of Esther, which took place after this, you have the story of Esther and Mordecai in the kingdom of Xerxes. And in that situation, one of the political hacks in the reign of Xerxes attempted to make anti-Semitism the law of the land. And you know, J.R., this theme is seen over and over again, not only in the Bible, but in history. For example, in Nazi Germany, they essentially made anti-Semitism the law of the land.
Yes.
And every time it's been tried, it's failed absolutely. Well, here, it's tried. It says here in verse 4, Then the presidents and the princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault. Forasmuch as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. Then said these men, We shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. Then these presidents and princes assembled together the king, and said thus unto him, King Darius, live forever. Now this next verse, verse 7, tells the story. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors, the princes, the counselors, and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree. And this is the craziest decree you can possibly imagine. Who would sign such a decree? That whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now that's a strange decree.
Must have been an upcoming birthday party, you know.
Yes.
See, we're going to honor you, and this is our 30-day decree that you are supreme. And they snookered him.
They did.
Royally. He signed the decree.
He signed the decree, which no man should have signed unless there was a reason for it. Of course, they were playing to his vanity here,
Yes.
and his princely demeanor. And no doubt they presented this to him in the most fatuous way.
I had that happen to me one time. Had a salesman sell me a refrigerator.
This sounds like an interesting story.
Yes, well, he got me to sign on the dotted line. I regretted that for years.
And
while I was making payments, of course.
Yes, but at the time it seemed like a good thing to sign, right?
Yeah, right.
So anyway, the king establishes the decree. It says, verse 8, "Now, O king, establish the decree, sign the writing, that it not be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree." Now, the law of the Medes and Persians was infallible, that is to say. Once a decree had been signed, no one could change it, not even the one who had signed it.
The law of the Medes and the Persians.
It's a terrible idea.
Amazing.
Terrible idea.
Mm-hmm. But they knew what they were going to do. They found Daniel praying. Oops. No one was supposed to pray to another god for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they knew that Daniel was going to open his window, and as he did 3 times every day, he kneeled toward Jerusalem, to the site of the ancient temple,
mm-hmm.
and he prayed.
Well, when he prays, he gives thanks before his God. In other words, Daniel was in the habit of acknowledging God in his daily life, and no doubt these people had spied on him, and they knew this.
Yes.
They had this all figured out beforehand. And, of course, it was just a matter of catching him. Verse 11, "Then these men assembled, found Daniel praying." They, quote-unquote, found him praying, as if they needed to find him. They knew exactly where he would be praying.
And they knew what time of the day to expect it, too.
That's right. And
they probably did this early in the morning, this first prayer of the day.
Yes.
So they'd have all day, to drag him before the king and take him through their kangaroo court and get him found guilty.
Mm-hmm. "And these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God." Now, this making supplication is the interesting thing, because the law was, "Whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man." That was the little catch. That was the hook in the law. And Daniel was not just acknowledging God. He was making supplication. That is, in other words, he was making prayer requests, probably for specific items, for specific people. This gives us a real clue as to how Daniel prayed. He didn't just pray some rote prayer, but he went before God and asked God for certain things specifically.
He didn't have any Muslim prayer beads.
Right.
He didn't just read from a rote book, a prayer book, but he actually prayed. I think we would do well to learn how to pray like Daniel prayed. For we are taught in the Bible how to bring our requests, our daily needs before the Lord. Daniel did. He got in trouble. In fact, this was very upsetting to Darius. He liked Daniel. He didn't want to see him go to the lion's den. And he really could care less, I guess, if Daniel prayed to somebody else. He just got caught in the law of the Medes and the Persians that changes not. And so, Gary, they had to send him to the lion's den.
They did indeed. And here's a case, J.R., of, I think we find this not only in this court, the court of Darius, and not only in the later court of King Xerxes under Esther and Mordecai, when Esther and Mordecai ran into the same problem, and not just in Nazi Germany, but we find this an ongoing situation in which there's always a little subterfuge in the mid-levels of government, where the advisors and the courtiers, if you will, the politicians get together, and they're somehow or another, they always seem to rule against the Jews.
Looking for a loophole,
Looking for a loophole. And we find this going on today, just as it went on in the court of Darius. The Jews always come out somehow scandalously treated under law.
So the king tried all day long to deliver Daniel. He labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him, and he couldn't do it. And so finally, he had to agree that Daniel would be lowered into the lion's den. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at Daniel and the lion's den and his deliverance. Daniel was let down into the lion's den. It's interesting that he was let down late at night, Gary. It's possible that maybe Darius was hoping the lions will be asleep, and early in the morning before the rising of the sun, he's back down there at the lion's den. Mm-hmm. Daniel, did God spare you? Daniel, are you there? Mm-hmm. And from within that lion's den comes, "O King, live forever." That's a fascinating story.
Yes, and the king spent the night fasting. You know, after Daniel was laid in the lion's den, they apparently the historical account says that he was lowered into the lion's den. Mm-hmm. A rock was placed over the opening. It was then sealed with the king's signet, and usually the way they did this was by putting a line over the rock and using like a wax seal to seal that line, and if anyone moved the rock, then you'd know immediately that if the string was broken or the seal was broken, you know the rock had been moved. It says here that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. In other words, the law was kept to the letter.
According to the law, he was supposed to be thrown or cast into the lion's den. I can't see Daniel being cast or thrown into the lion's den, just dropping him down through this hole. I think he was probably lowered because the king liked Daniel. He wouldn't want Daniel to be thrown in head first or feet first. I don't know how deep this lion's den was, but the lions were not there as a status symbol for the king. They were there as his executioners, I'm sure.
Now, he spent the night fasting and experiencing nothing pleasant or relaxing. He was commiserating with Daniel all night long. And the king rose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said unto Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. Well, there it is.
In fact, Daniel goes on to explain to the king that God sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. In other words, I haven't done anything against you, king, and since God saw that I was an innocent person, the Lord sent his angel to shut the mouths of the lions. So I suppose Daniel had a wonderful time that night visiting with the angel.
Mm-hmm. Now, Josephus writes in this way concerning this account. Now, when his enemies saw that Daniel had suffered nothing which was terrible, they would not own that he was preserved by God and by his providence, but they said that the lions had been filled full with food. And on that account it was that they supposed the lions would not touch Daniel. In other words, these people who had first put together the plot against Daniel knew that Darius loved Daniel. And they thought to themselves, well, Darius fed the lions so they wouldn't be hungry. That's what really happened. So they alleged this to the king, according to Josephus. But the king, out of an abhorrence of their wickedness, gave the order that they should throw in a great deal of flesh to the lions. And when they had filled themselves, he gave the further order that Daniel's enemies would also be cast into the den, that they might learn whether the lions, now that they were full, would touch them or not. So this is the real test.
So they learned.
And they learned well, and it appeared plain to Darius, after the princes had been cast to the wild beasts, that it was God who had preserved Daniel. For the lions spared none of them, but tore them all to pieces, as if they had been very hungry and wanted food. So here it is, another testimony to another monarch in the life of Daniel. His life is nothing but a series of testimonies to kings that it is God who rules in the affairs of men. Even after these lions had all the food they wanted, they still ripped up the evil princes.
Now, I believe there's a prophecy here. I believe it shows us what's going to happen to the Jews during the tribulation period. I think that the world is going to try to destroy the Jews. I see Armageddon here, but they're going to survive, and those who will die are those who hate the Jews. Jesus Christ is coming back to this earth. He's going to destroy the wicked and preserve the good and preserve the saints. And so Israel will be vindicated. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And I see a prophecy here.
Absolutely. Again and again we see it. Anti-Semitism made the law of the land in an attempt to destroy the Jews. And of course, in the tribulation period, the Jews will be persecuted and they will have to flee to the hills. There's even a warning given by the Lord Jesus in Matthew that when you see these things begin to happen, then flee to the hills because they're coming after you.
And another thing, God promised Abraham that all who cursed him would be cursed. In other words, if you don't love the Jewish people, then you're going to pay for it. Anti-Semitism doesn't sit too well with God.
That's right. It's called curse for curse in kind. Those who have attempted to curse Israel are cursed in the same way in which they sought to destroy the Jews. And so in verse 24, the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel and cast them into the den of the lions, them, their children, and their wives. Wow. And the lions had the mastery of them and broke all their bones in pieces or ever they came at the bottom of the den. In other words, before they hit the ground at the bottom of the den, the lions grabbed them and broke them up, tore them to pieces. Those were angry lions.
Yes. So Darius wrote a letter, a decree to all the people, nations, and languages that dwell upon the earth. Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree. Gary, is this the kind of decree that changes not because of the law of the Meades and the Persians?
It would seem so. It would seem so.
Here's the decree, that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and steadfast forever, in his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth, this is the decree of Darius, God delivers and rescues. He worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. There came a time when this law was forgotten.
Yes, indeed. The law was forgotten, but you know, to this day, the tomb of Daniel stands there as a monument to this decree. Josephus writes, now when Daniel was become so illustrious and famous on account of the opinion men had that he was beloved of God, he built a tower at Ecbatana in Media. It was a most elegant building and wonderfully made, and is still remaining, and is preserved to this day. And to such as see it, it appears to have been lately built, and to have been no older than the very day when one looks upon it, as it is so fresh. And this became the tomb of Daniel, and believe it or not, J.R., it's still there. It's still a tourist attraction in that part of the world, although we really can't book a tour to it today because it's in contested territory. But it's a beautiful, large building that's still there to this day, and it stands a testimony to the God of Daniel.
And to Daniel and his wisdom as well. Well, it's a fascinating study, this book of Daniel. Everything in it has a prophetic implication to the end of days, to the conclusion of the times of the Gentiles. And Gary, I believe we're living in the days of the conclusion of the times of the Gentiles, even as we speak.
The lions are licking their chops, shall we say. The hungry lions around the world. And there will come a day, sadly, when anti-Semitism will become the law of the global community, and when Israel be persecuted and driven into hiding during the time of the beast. And J.R., this is a prophecy of that time, but the Lord's going to deliver his people.
Jesus Christ is coming back to this earth. He's going to rule from Jerusalem as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and he's going to make Israel at the head of the nations. We'll be back in just a moment.